She vanished from the Air Force without a trace. Now they're forcing her back into the cockpit to hunt down the man she once trained. If you drove past her house on Waco Street in Fort Collins, Colorado, you probably wouldn't notice it. Just a plain two-story home with faded tan siding and a mailbox hanging on by a single screw. Nothing stood out, no garden, no welcome mat. The woman who lived there, Danielle Mercer, didn't draw attention, and she preferred it that way. Most mornings you'd see her walking to her car with a reusable coffee mug in hand, hair neatly tied back, aviator glasses on, like clockwork. She worked at R Land Systems, a government defense contractor just outside Loveland, buried under paperwork, cycling through inventory schedules and writing logistics reports. Quiet, efficient, dependable. Colleagues said she was reserved but always met her deadlines. A supervisor once remarked she was the kind of employee who could vanish for 2 weeks and still finish the job ahead of schedule. She never talked about family, never brought anyone to company picnics, and never stayed past 4:30, like she disappeared. Of course, there were rumors that she had served in the military, that she held some kind of security clearance. Someone swore they'd seen her name on a DoD memo during an internship at the Pentagon. But no one asked. She gave off an energy not hostile, but final, like a door you just knew not to knock on. What no one knew, not colleagues, not neighbors, not even the guy who dated her for 3 months back in 2021, was that Danielle "Danny" Mercer had once been a fighter pilot. And not just any pilot. She flew F-35s, ran missions over Eastern European airspace, logged more than 2,000 hours in hostile skies. Her call sign was Echo, and for 8 years she buried every trace of that life like a bad dream. But nightmares don't stay buried, especially when the people who made them haven't forgotten your name. On a Saturday morning around 6:45, Danny stood barefoot in her kitchen, flipping through a stack of expired coupons, trying to decide if she should go grocery shopping. She wore sweatpants and an old U.S. Air Force hoodie slung over one shoulder. Luther Vandross played softly from her phone, his smooth voice filling the quiet. Then her phone buzzed. A number she hadn't seen in years. A number that should have been deleted, blocked, erased. Her hand froze midair. Her stomach tightened in a familiar knot, not quite panic, not yet just memory. A cold wave spread from her chest before her brain could catch up. She didn't answer. She just stared. When the call ended, she turned off her phone and stuffed it in a kitchen drawer. 10 minutes later, a knock at the door. 3 short, solid knocks, military rhythm. Danny didn't move. Whoever it was didn't knock again. They just quietly slid a white envelope through the mail slot and left. She waited. Not sure how long, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10. Then she picked it up. No return address. Just a seal, Department of the Air Force Office of Special Projects. Inside was a grainy aerial photo night vision lens, 2 fighter jets. One bore a U.S. Air Force insignia, the other didn't. Along with it, a small sticky note. "We know who the other pilot is, and we know you trained him." Her fingers clenched the paper. Her throat was dry. It had been 8 years. 8 years since what happened in Syria. 8 years since she handed back her wings and said she was done. No farewell ceremony, no honors, just silence. By now, she was supposed to be invisible. She'd signed everything, kept her head down, followed every rule. But somehow they still found her. And the worst part, that pilot, the one in the blurry photo, she knew exactly who it was. But she never thought he'd come back. She never thought he'd betray her. But the moment she saw that picture, she understood one thing: any peace she ever thought she had was over. And someone wanted to pull her back into the sky. But before she could stop them, the gears were already in motion. The next morning, Danny packed her bags. Not because she was ordered to, not yet. Not because she intended to obey. She just had a feeling, the slow-burning, silent kind that never proved her wrong. She didn't know who was watching, how closely they were tracking, but something told her if she didn't leave now, there would be no second chance. By noon, she was behind the wheel of a 2006 black Tacoma heading south on I-25. No phone, no GPS. She knew the route by heart, even if she hadn't driven it in nearly a decade. But every turn, every stretch of highway came back like an old scar. 12 hours later, she crossed into Texas. Not the urban parts, not Austin, not Dallas. She kept going past Amarillo Lock and miles of wide, empty silence until the highway gave way to cracked county roads where pickups drove with only one working headlight. She stopped at a roadside motel off Route 287, no ID, cash only. left the key under the doormat, and left the next morning. 2 hours later, she pulled up to a place called Rock Creek Ranch, a sun-beaten patch of land outside Wichita Falls, once owned by her late uncle. He'd died in 2009. No one in the family wanted the land. So Danny kept the deed. And the silence. The place looked rough. The stables had collapsed. The porch sagged in the middle. Weeds grew tall enough to hide snakes. But that wasn't why she came back. She parked behind the house, walked 100 meters past the broken fence through the brush to a shallow dip in the land where an old windmill stood still. And there, half buried under a rotted green tarp and 6 inches of red dust, was a storage trunk, 3 padlocks. Danny knelt and dug it out with her bare hands. Inside were things she swore she'd never touch again: a flight suit, a matte black pilot's helmet, her old call sign Echo stenciled in silver across the top, a USB drive, and a weathered Department of Defense dossier. Inside recordings reports mission logs from 2017, her final deployment. The one she was never allowed to speak of. The one that broke her. She turned the pages slowly, breathing steady but shallow. Then she stopped. A name, Nikolai Dragunov. Back then, he was just a young Bulgarian pilot trained through a U.S. joint program. Quiet, brilliant, spoke perfect English. She had personally trained him twice, once in Germany, once in Nevada. He was the good kid, a natural in the sky. She remembered thinking, he reminds me of myself at 24, too fast, too confident, and maybe that's why. She missed the signs. He vanished from the radar the same week she resigned. No one talked about it. No one filed a report, until now. Somehow he came back, flying with stolen tech, mimicking American tactics, and if the envelope on her floor was real, they thought she knew something. Or worse, they thought she trained him to do it on purpose. This wasn't suspicion anymore. It was a trap. She sat on the floor, staring at the open case. Her fingers clenched the folder tight. The Texas wind howled through her hoodie, but she didn't flinch. She hadn't touched this part of her life in years, convinced she could outrun it, bury it here in the dust and regret. But the past doesn't rot, not when the government keeps a copy. She knew how this would go. They'd ask questions with answers already decided. They'd threaten charges, say she was involved, say she helped him vanish. They wouldn't care about the truth of what happened on that 2017 mission, the one where 2 fighter jets entered a blackout zone and only 1 came back. Now they wanted her back in the cockpit, not for justice, but as bait. She stood up, brushed dirt from her knees, and zipped the folder shut. This wasn't redemption. It was a trap, and she wouldn't walk into it blind. But someone knew she was here, and they'd been waiting. Danny drove back to Colorado in silence. No music, no radio, only the sound of tires on asphalt, and that old empty rhythm pounding in her chest, the same one that always came before a mission. Not fear, not panic, but a kind of pulsing resignation. She didn't go straight home, took 2 laps around the block, turned down a different street, and parked 5 houses away just in case. When she stepped up onto the porch, everything looked untouched. No shattered windows, no unfamiliar cars nearby. But the doormat was crooked, and Danny had never left it like that. She stepped inside. No lights, no sound. But the air felt altered. She checked each room with the precision of someone trained to notice the smallest changes: a curtain not falling straight, a fridge handle smudged in the opposite direction from how she opened it. The intruder was smart, professional. They hadn't taken anything, just looked around, maybe cloned her hard drive, maybe left something behind. She reached for her backup phone, a prepaid burner buried beneath clutter in the drawer, and dialed a number she'd memorized years ago but hadn't used since the day she walked away. 1 ring, 2, then a familiar voice answered, "Merc." "Don't call me that," she cut in. The voice chuckled softly. "You're the one calling me. I don't permit the use of my name. And I didn't permit anyone to break into my home. You think that still matters at this point?" She closed her eyes. "How bad is it?" A pause. "You trained him, Danny. You know what he's capable of. He took out one of ours last week, over the Adriatic. No call sign, no authorization. He flew like a ghost." "And what do you expect me to do?" she asked coldly. "Fly up and preach at him midair. We think you're the only one who can anticipate his moves." She shook her head, even though she knew he couldn't see her. "No, What you really want is for me to get back in the cockpit. That's what this is. Another silence. Meet me at Cheyenne Mountain, 5 a.m. tomorrow. Make yourself clear, Mercer. If not, we'll assume the worst. The call ended. Danny stared at the burner phone in her hand. That voice, Lieutenant Colby Jensen, had once been her commanding officer, the one who stood up for her when no one else would. He was also the one who had begged her not to leave after Syria. And now he was the one giving orders and threats. That night she stayed up going through the file she'd brought back from Texas, spreading it across her kitchen table. Reports, flight data, mission logs, and her own handwritten notes made right after the crash, never submitted, never shown to anyone. Because what happened that day wasn't pilot error, it wasn't the weather, and it wasn't enemy fire, it was sabotage. Dragunov had cut comms, broke formation, and vanished. She'd chased him for 36 miles until the order came to stand down. The other jet piloted by Lieutenant Grant Fowler didn't make it, but Danny knew Dragunov didn't kill Fowler directly. No missiles, no shots fired. He just left him out there alone, surrounded with no cover. And the Pentagon let it slide. They let her walk away. On paper, they called it burnout. But deep down, Danny always knew the real reason they were afraid of what she might say if she stayed. Now they wanted her back, not because they trusted her, but because they needed a shield, a scapegoat, someone to throw in front of Dragunov and hope he'd hesitate. At 4 a.m., she pulled into a roadside diner just off Highway 85 outside Cheyenne. Two truckers sat in the back, half asleep over their coffee. A waitress limped between tables, taking orders with one hand and wiping her eyes with the other. Danny sat at the end of the counter, ordered eggs she didn't plan to eat, and waited. At 4:23, Jensen walked in. No uniform, but every step still carried that soldier's weight, like he was reporting in. He sat across from her, pulled a file from his coat, and placed it on the table. Before he could say a word, she said, "You're not telling me everything." Jensen looked exhausted. "Of course not. If I had, you wouldn't have come." She nodded slowly. He opened the file, a fresh satellite photo. Dragunov's fighter jet, clear as day. It's an F-35 but modified. Our engine, our stealth tech. But he's using a non-standard flight system, custom-coded. Someone on the inside helped him. "And you think it's me?" she asked, her voice icy. "No," he said, locking eyes with her. "I think you're the best chance we've got to stop him before he sells that tech to the guy planning to hit Los Angeles." She leaned back in her seat. Behind them, two drivers laughed at something. A waitress dropped a fork. Everything outside their corner of the diner looked normal. But nothing was normal anymore, because Danny wasn't a civilian now, not really, and she couldn't pretend otherwise, not one more time. But accepting that meant getting back in the cockpit and facing the past she had walked away from. That night, Danny didn't sleep. She stayed at a motel near the airbase, staring at the ceiling while static crackled from the TV behind her. Her bag still sat by the door unopened. She hadn't even taken off her shoes. At 05:00, she walked through the gates of the Cheyenne Mountain complex. No greetings, no ceremony, just a silent escort team and 3 layers of steel-reinforced doors. The hangar was colder than she remembered, cold, harsh, more like a vault for secrets than a place for planes. They'd rolled her bird out of storage. Same tail number, same scuff on the left wing. She knew that jet better than her own face. F-35 Lightning II. Silent, fast, lethal. She used to call it her second skin. A young technician approached, clipboard in hand. Early 20s, buzzing with nervous energy. "You're cleared for a 20-minute familiarization run," he said. "Just target lock simulation. We'll be monitoring your biometrics." She raised an eyebrow. "I thought this was about trust." He looked down. "I'm just following orders, ma'am." She didn't answer. In the locker room, she suited up. The fabric felt stiff at first, tight across her chest, foreign against her skin. But when the helmet clicked into place, her breathing changed. Slower, sharper, as if her body remembered what her mind had tried to forget. She climbed into the cockpit, strapped in, and rested her hand on the throttle a beat too long. One push, and she was airborne. The air slammed into her like a punch, thin, fast, loud. But then the rhythm returned, smooth banking turns, precision rolls, movements fluid like swimming through the sky. She banked left, dipped low, tracing the curves of the Rockies like her muscles still held the memory. And in a way they did. The comms crackled in her ear. Echo, you are cleared. Simulated target lock at Point Alpha. On her HUD, she spotted the target, an old drone drifting just below the cloud line. She double-tapped. Target locked. Confirmed. Proceed to Point Bravo. She flew harder now, faster every move, cleaner, sharper, with zero hesitation. Then she heard a voice not Jensen's as she'd expected. It was him, Dragunov. He had breached the comms channel. Lovely to hear your voice on the air again, Echo. His voice came through calm, smooth, chillingly familiar. How's the altitude up there? Still sings like it did in your memories? Her heart pounded in her chest. She didn't answer. Come on, he continued. I know you're listening. We used to talk better than this. That voice steady, not mocking, just present. Why now? She finally asked, eyes fixed forward. Because I knew you'd come back. They always pull out the broken things when the fire gets too close. You killed Fowler. I left Fowler with his choices, he replied coldly. Just like I left you. Her jaw tightened. Where are you? Oh, Danny, the game's changed now. You fly in circles. I'm the one drawing the map. Then the channel cut pure silence. Command, do you copy? She asked. No response. She was alone by herself in the air over 32,000 feet above the ground, and suddenly she understood. This wasn't just a rogue pilot. This was a message. He wanted her to fly, wanted her attention, and he knew exactly how to get it. On the ground, the control team scrambled to trace the breach. Too late. He was gone before they even realized he'd been there. Danny stepped off the runway, helmet in hand, face unreadable. Jensen approached her. We're suspending your access until the breach is investigated. No, she said. He frowned. What did you just say? I'm no longer your liability. I'm the only chance you've got. He stared at her for a long moment. You really want to go back up? She didn't answer. She just looked up at the sky, because now it wasn't about flying. It was about everything they had kept from her the first time. The first time Danny saw Dragunov fly, she had whispered, what every other instructor only dared to say behind closed doors. He doesn't control the aircraft. He owns it. Back then, it was praise. Now, it felt like the warning she had ignored. For the next 2 days, Danny stayed on base. No outside contact. They called it a security protocol. She called it surveillance. She wasn't stupid. They didn't really trust her. Not with what Dragunov knew. Not with the silence she'd kept since she left. Jensen handed her a stack of flight recordings footage from each time the rogue aircraft had been spotted. Every video looked the same, an American-made fighter skimming terrain, pushing through impossible weather, evading drones, then vanishing from radar before anyone could blink. Watch this, Jensen said, pausing a frame mid-video. In the clip, the jet flipped upside down right before diving into a canyon, a maneuver that blatantly violated every flight safety protocol. Danny tilted her head. This isn't reflex, she said. This is signature. Jensen nodded. He played another clip, same move, different location. Where's this? She asked. Utah. 3 days ago. Another one. New Mexico. 5 days ago. He was taunting them, leaving breadcrumbs only someone sharp enough could follow. He's flying the way I taught him, Danny murmured. But he's added something else, some kind of foreign flight system, maybe European. She leaned back, closed her eyes. There's a pattern here. You think he's trying to make contact? Jensen asked. No, she replied. I think he's proving something, that he's better now, that he's taken everything I taught him and built something we can't stop. She stood. I need to fly again, this time with a tracker. I want to draw him out. Jensen hesitated. He's not just going to show up for a duel. He already did, she said. Last time in the air, that wasn't just a breach. That was a test. She didn't say the rest, that maybe, just maybe, he wanted her to chase him, not stop him. The next morning, she was cleared to fly again. The jet she flew had no tail number, a prototype part, F-35 part next-gen stealth project, still deep in classified testing. She flew for hours. High altitude, low runs, absolute silence. No comms, no signals, nothing. By the 4th flight, something changed. It began with a flicker on radar. Just a blip, too fast, too far. Then came the sound, not through the headset, from the aircraft itself, static. Then a voice, "You found my trail, Echo." Her blood went cold. I thought you'd forgotten. Buried me. But now, here you are. Where are you? She said, voice steady. Right behind you, just like always. She immediately checked 6 o'clock. Nothing. But the sensors began to glitch interference static auto reboots midair. He was jamming her, but not completely. Just enough to toy with her. Why are you doing this? She asked. You trained me to be better, faster, invisible. Now I am. This isn't a competition. He laughed. Of course it is. You just stopped playing. She clenched her teeth. What do you want, Dragunov? You left me behind in Syria. You followed orders, watched me drop off radar, and did nothing. I tried, she hissed. Not hard enough. Then the signal cut. He vanished again. No trace. No target lock. Nothing. She landed 20 minutes later, hands trembling as she removed her gloves. Jensen was waiting. He was there, she said. I know. We caught part of the signal. He wasn't hiding. He was calling out. Jensen didn't look surprised. We detected an encrypted data burst sent across a decommissioned military frequency. We're tracing the origin. What was in it, she asked. He handed her a printout, coordinates, and a single line, come finish what you started. But Danny couldn't finish what she couldn't fully remember, and that was what scared her most. They'd never let her speak about what happened in Syria. Officially, the mission had been aborted due to hostile interference. Internally, it had been labeled under a blacked-out code name, one of those vague phrases built to contain everything Project Torchline. But Danny remembered every second. She sat alone in the mountain-deep conference room watching the same 12 minutes of blurred footage over and over the night of March 18, 2017. 2 fighters in the air, her and Lieutenant Fowler. The original mission was simple track movement near the Syria-Turkey border scan for thermal signatures and return. No engagement, no pursuit, no contact. Dragunov wasn't in the plan, but 37 minutes after takeoff he appeared no call sign flying an aircraft nobody could identify. Not Russian, not NATO, something custom. Danny radioed command to confirm ID 3 times. By the time they answered, Fowler was dead. No explosion, no debris, no warning. His fighter simply lost power, lost comms, and nosedived into the sand at 800 knots. Gone. Danny circled above, screaming into the mic, pilot down, confirm rescue unit. No one responded. Then she heard his voice. Dragunov, you should leave Echo. They've already decided how this ends. She asked him what the hell he meant. He didn't reply, and she didn't fire. She couldn't. He wasn't flagged as hostile. He wasn't even supposed to be there. When she landed, command had the story ready. Mechanical failure. No enemy present. A formal condolence sent to Fowler's family. Danny pushed back. Filed 3 complaints. Tried to escalate the matter. They told her to stop. First politely, then clearly. So she left. Packed her things, turned in her pilot license, moved to Colorado. Told herself it was over. Told herself it wasn't her fault. But it was. Because she hadn't pushed hard enough. Hadn't made them listen. Now Fowler was dead and Dragunov wasn't just alive, he was turning the ghost of that night into a real threat, a threat with teeth. Jensen slid a thick file across the table toward her. Internal investigation report from 2017, he said. Some things were buried very deep. She flipped through it, her own reports redacted, audio logs deleted. But there was something new, a satellite ping caught just before Fowler went missing, not in Syria, not even airborne. It came from a small station outside Diyarbakir, Turkey, an illegal relay point masking signal data. What is this? She asked. Jensen lowered his voice. A black site. Not officially ours, at least not on paper. She looked at the file, then at him. You think that's where he got the tech? Jensen nodded. And maybe more than that. What do you mean? Jensen hesitated, then said it plainly. We think someone on the inside gave him the flight override codes. Her jaw tightened. The kill switch. She leaned back in her chair, exhaled. So Fowler didn't go down, he was shot down. Jensen didn't say yes, he didn't need to. And now Dragunov was out there with U.S. stealth tech and a custom control protocol because someone inside had handed it over. For money, for ideology, for leverage. She didn't know. But one thing she did know, this wasn't a rogue pilot anymore. This was a weapon. A weapon she'd helped build, however unintentionally. She stood taking the file with her. I want another flight, she said. Jensen looked uncertain. We don't even have a target, we do now. She pointed to the Turkish relay site coordinates. He started there, so do I. He studied her face. You plan to go alone? She nodded. If it's a trap, I'm the only one who knows how to walk into it. But even she couldn't predict what Dragunov had prepared or how far he'd go to force her hand. Just before midnight, Danny touched down at a forward airstrip in southern Turkey. The heat still clung to the tarmac like smoke, though the sun had long since set. The only light came from a red bulb on the control tower and the faint blinking of her cockpit panel as she shut everything down. No welcome crew, no support team. That was the deal. She wanted it this way. 30 minutes later, she was crossing the barren desert alone, lightly packed tracking systems disabled. The coordinates led her to a high ridge overlooking an abandoned comms site, rusted satellite dishes, broken transmitters, and a low concrete building with no windows. She pulled a small scanner from her jacket and swept for heat signatures. Only one. Inside the building. And he was waiting. She didn't knock. She pushed the door open and stepped in. He was there. Nikolai Dragunov. Older, thinner, eyes sunken, but still with that chilling calm, like he always knew everyone's hand and didn't care. "I wondered if you'd come," he said, seated behind an old steel desk, as if it were just another day at the office. "You left a trail," Danny said. "I knew you'd follow." She didn't sit, didn't blink. "What is this Nick Revenge show?" He gave a thin smile. "It's truth, Danny. You spent your whole life following orders. And me, I learned what happens when you stop. You killed Fowler." "No, they did. I just stopped playing the role they gave me. You could speak out, you could expose them. And then what testify believe in a system that buried pilots the moment they were no longer useful?" He stood up slowly. Thin frame, every movement deliberate. Not like a soldier, but something sharper. "I didn't come here to fight," she said. "Good," he replied, "because you'd lose. You're not faster than me." "No," she said, "but I'm freer." He stepped closer. Close enough for her to see the scar just below his left ear, a memento from a landing gone wrong back when he still belonged to them. "Why show yourself now?" she asked. "Why not keep hiding?" "Because I wanted you to see," he said. "To see what happens when the ones who always obey finally say no." Then he handed her a small device, a square of warm metal resting in her palm. She stared at it. "What is this proof? Every log, every recording, everything they did to erase what happened. Not just to me, to Fowler, to all the other pilots. You weren't the only one they left behind." Her stomach tightened. "What do you want me to do with it? That's up to you. Toss it, burn it, or take it back. Show them that lies don't get to live forever." She narrowed her eyes. "And you?" He shrugged. "I'm done. Flying was always your thing." He walked past her and disappeared into the dark. No goodbye, no warning, and she let him go. 2 days later, she flew home. Not as a soldier, not as a hero, but as someone who had finally seen the whole picture. She left the USB on Jensen's desk, without saying a word. 3 weeks passed, no calls, no reports. Then she received a letter, no return address. Inside a slip of paper, 5 words printed plain: "You were right to leave." Danny Mercer moved again. New city, new name, but this time she wasn't running. She joined a youth flight program in Arizona, teaching flight mechanics to kids who had never touched a joystick, showing them how to fly for themselves, not for medals, not for politics, just for the sky. Sometimes she'd glance up at a patch of open blue and remember, not the crash, not the betrayal, but the moment she chose to return. Not for them, for herself. That was the real homecoming. Because sometimes leaving isn't weakness, it's survival. And coming back, that's strength. If you've ever felt like you're carrying more than your share, like the truth is too heavy to speak, remember this story. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're still holding on to something that no longer serves you, maybe it's time to let it go.